Joining me now is Zak Ringelstein. Zak is running for Senate in Maine. Welcome to the program, Zak. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Cenk?
I'm good. I think that there's an interesting issue about your candidacy in particular, and in terms of how the voting in Maine works. I want to get to that in a minute.
Sure.
But before we get to that, there's a fun story about how you were born on a kitchen floor or something. What happened?
That is a true story. My mom was one of those unbelievable women who are out there who decided to go against the mainstream and have a natural home birth. She actually had 3 out of 4 of her children at home. Shout out to my mom right now. She's an amazing woman. My wife actually has given birth now to 2 children, and both at our home. But we are very much in support of modern medicine and would have transferred if there was any issue.
Okay, all right, fascinating. So you lived in rural Maine, is that right, when you were growing up?
Yeah, I grew up on Lake Winnipesaukee, and my wife grew up in Rangeley, which are very rural areas in the region.
I got you. But then you wound up going to Columbia, and you and your wife graduated with how much in debt?
Over $150,000 in debt.
Jesus Christ, man. This is insane. I mean, it takes a lifetime to pay back $150,000 under normal circumstances.
That is correct. It's a crying shame. Doesn't make any sense. As an 18-year-old going into college, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I think even my family was sold an idea that they shouldn't have been sold.
So, Zak, any particular proposals if you're a United States Senator on that issue?
Yes. I actually believe in total loan forgiveness. Did you know, Cenk, that it would cost less to completely wipe out all loans in America than this recent tax bill or tax scam?
Wow. So, look, I remember interviewing Jill Stein and thinking, well, I'm 100% for tuition-free college, but the loan forgiveness seemed a bit much. On the other hand, a bit much is what the rich always get.
That's right. We have socialism, welfare for the rich, and the rest of us are rugged individualists, as Martin Luther King said. Yeah. And I think we're under attack. And so I'm kind of sick of these arguments that don't make any sense. At the end of the day, millennials are buying homes at lower rates than any other generation that preceded them. We're actually have a lower percentage of entrepreneurship. And that's directly tied to the fact that we have these huge college debts we have to pay off.
And the housing prices are way up, our wages are stagnant, and then we're saddled with so much debt that we become, in essence, indentured servants, but for way longer than the 7 years that indentured servitude used to be. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could pay off all your loans in 7 years?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're actually introducing a policy tomorrow at a major university in Maine about ways for Americans, again, for the first time, I think, since the JFK generation, to give back to their communities, to their rural communities, to all their communities. And in return, they should get some serious loan forgiveness.
Yeah. Zak, you want to become an entrepreneur anyway, though, right?
That's correct. I taught public school for 5 years. And then I went on and I started my own education company with my wife, Leah.
Okay. So what, you sold that company?
That's correct. So we started doing these exchanges between classrooms just as teachers, trying to make the world a better place, and kind of tell the privatization movement and this attack on the public school that we weren't having it. We're going to do holistic education, constructivist education. And the long and the short of it is it blew up. It was in over 5,000 schools. We ended up giving a TED Talk on the standardized testing industry and how much it's damaging our schools and our children. And we ended up actually doing some work at the White House in early education policy, and we sold it in 2015.
Yeah, I remember we had a great public high school where I went in New Jersey, and my favorite class was humanities, where we learned philosophy and poetry. And since we were ranked so high, they immediately killed that program in an effort to drive us down.
That's just the case. I was talking to someone in Maine the other day who was talking about how, because of standardized testing, all of the Latin programs in public schools have been demolished. If I hadn't, I actually took Latin in my public high school, and that class was probably the most significant academic course that I had. But these things are being cut in the name of, honestly, profit.
Zach, what'd you do after you sold the company?
I actually moved back to Maine and I started teaching again. And that's
aren't you supposed to go on a yacht somewhere and be done with all this?
That's what everyone said. My wife and I had this dream to buy a farm and do something like that. And the long and the short of it is that we ultimately wanted to be like our parents. My dad's a social worker. My wife's mom and dad are teachers. And we never really felt comfortable in the world that we were in, and ultimately felt like the working class is just not represented in these areas. And I'm finding that again. I'm finding that in politics. It's kind of gross when you walk out of it at the end of the day, because you recognize that the people you grew up with and the people who are most affected by these policies are not there. They're not present. They're not at the table. They're on the menu.
Yeah. So Zach's not taking any PAC money or corporate or lobbyist money. But Zach, let's talk about voting in Maine, because this is important and interesting in your case. So people are worried that you're going to split the vote because right now the senator is Angus King. So he's 73 years old. That's fine. There's another great senator from nearby that's also in his 70s.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Right. He's an independent, but he does caucus with the Democrats.
Sure.
So how does the voting in the primaries and general election work in Maine?
So first of all, we are going to be the first U.S. Senate seat ever to be decided by something called ranked choice. I know you've talked about it on your program in the past, but what it does is it makes it so that the voters can go ahead and rank their choices, and it allows for a more earnest decision-making process where the honest candidates usually win, where it negates the spoiler effect, and where it makes the discussion and dialogue more policy-based and more civil.
Mm-hmm. So if they liked you the best and they liked Angus King second, as an example, that doesn't help the Republican at all, right? Because if you don't win, then the vote goes to Angus King. Do I understand that right?
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So then how would it split the vote?
Well, it doesn't split the vote. That's been our thought the whole time. We entered this race saying, why wouldn't there be a progressive, no PAC, no lobbyist money, no corporation candidate? Why would we allow for that in this day and age when there is ranked choice? Ranked choice was put through by the people on a referendum, and the reason they did this is because LePage, if you know about him, he's our worst nightmare in the state. LePage got in by the spoiler effect a couple times, so people are afraid of this spoiler effect. But one of the reasons why ranked choice is here and now and in action is because of that issue. And now we get to run all candidates, all great candidates, and don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, so the establishment's so funny, man. They will always find a way to support the incumbent and the powerful and the elite, no matter what. So in California, we've got a runoff where it could be that you, and it often is, where there's no Republican in the general election. Two Democrats win the primary and they move forward. So they have no excuse about, oh, hey, if a really progressive Democrat wins the primary, they might lose in a general election. No, you could have two Democrats in the general election. Well, they use that excuse anyway. In Maine, you got ranked choice voting, and they throw the split the vote at you anyway when it's almost literally impossible.
That is 100% correct, and we're going to yell it from the mountaintops, and we're going to win this election because people want progressive values. They want Medicare for all. They want college debt to be history. We want to actually grow wages, and unfortunately, Angus is, he just voted for Mike Pompeo. And he co-sponsored that bill to deregulate banks. And quite frankly, it's because he's bought. He's bought, and I'm not. So I think that sophisticated Maine voters, that's why we're getting such a wonderful groundswell here. And if you don't mind, Cenk, we actually did something for the show. Can Can we show you all of King's sponsorships
Yes.
in one representation?
Sure. That
Okay, I
sounds
want to show
fun.
you this. We created a NASCAR jersey of all of the places where Angus King takes his money.
Okay. So you did it, as this is literal, because people have memes about this. But in your case,
do they? I didn't realize that. we decided to make our own because we're not taking any corporate, any PAC, any lobbyist money. So we only have the people. And I think that that's the power of this. I mean, he takes from all those brands that you see there, which include Nestle Waters, which are buying off all of our public resources. It includes Goldman Sachs, TD Bank, pharmaceutical companies, college loan companies. I mean, it's grotesque. McDonald's. I mean, this is who has Angus King's ear, and we're not bought.
Yeah, and look, Angus King is not the worst person who caucuses with the Democrats. He's way better than a Republican. He's also way worse than Zak.
Thank you, Cenk.
Here's Zak's links. Get in the fight. If you're in the area, volunteer, donate. He's not taking any PAC money, not taking any corporate money. Ring the bell for Ringelstein.
Yes, sir. Ring the bell. And I just want to do one last thing. We're going to go ahead and challenge Angus King right here, right now on the show to stop taking corporate PAC money once and for all.
Wonderful. I love it. Let's get that to the press in Maine and see if Angus King will rise to the challenge because it's embarrassing. Even if he votes well on some of the issues, you can't trust him. If he's taken the corporate PAC money, you know what Americans believe, and rightly so. That means he's serving his donors and not his voters. So he's got to put his money where his mouth is and so not take corporate PAC money like Zak is doing in his campaign. All right.
Jake, thank you for all you do. It's unbelievable what you do. We are all better for it. So
thank you, Zak. That's way, way too kind. Again, Ringelstein4Maine.com, Ringelstein4Maine.com. Click on the links below there. Do you guys know how to click? It's super easy, right? You go to the description, click, there it is. Okay,
yeah,
at least
small
find
donations.
out more about the
We
campaign.
love small donations. Thank you.
The small donations beat big donations. That's our thesis.
That's right.
See how it turns out. We're going to find out soon. Zak, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Go get them.
Thank you, Jake. We'll see you in the Senate.